What have you learned the last few years of censorship canceling about religions? You can't say anything about Muslim, okay? They're not tolerant when it comes down to bashing their religion. You can't say anything about Judaism. If you do, you could potentially get canceled all over the place. But say anything you want about Christianity, and it's like, it's okay. You can make a comedy thing, a skit, make fun of them. They're totally fine. Because Christians are known for being the most tolerant religion. And in America, Christians have been like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And finally they're saying, dude, I am no longer okay. You're pushing the envelope with my kids and I'm sick of it. And they're starting to find themselves. So let me tell you what I got here. I got a bunch of polls from Gallup. I got studies on black Democrats versus white Democrats on how they stand towards LGBTQ, transgender, same-sex marriage. We're going to look at some of the most tolerant countries in the world towards same-sex marriage. We're also going to hear a message from Malcolm X on what he had to say many years ago, which for some of you are going to listen to say, holy flippin' moly. But we're definitely going to touch this uncomfortable issue of same-sex marriage in this episode. This one's a tough one, ain't it? You're kind of like looking at saying, is Pat really going into this? I am. By the way, if you get value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. But here's what prompted this episode. A Gallup poll came out recently saying fewer in U.S. say same-sex relations morally acceptable. Now, Gallup is not left, it's not right. It's in the middle, similar to Pew Research. Here's what they had to say. They had a lot of different issues to see the plus minus, such as birth control, divorce, having a baby outside of marriage, gambling, death penalty, abortion. Everything is there, but the one that had the biggest plus minus was gay or lesbian relations. We went from 2022, 71% being okay with it, to a drop of 7% now down to 64%, which, by the way, even Democrats went from 85% to 79% saying they're okay with same-sex marriage. This is kind of strange when you look at this, right? So we said, let's look at this even a little bit more. How did this happen? Did we all of a sudden become more conservative? Did we all of a sudden as a nation say, no, we're not okay with this? I don't know, but there's definitely some things to go even deeper on to take a look at. Another Gallup poll came out with the following question. Do you think gays or lesbians should or should not be hired for each of the following occupations? There's a bunch of them. I'm only going to touch a few of them. If you want to see the rest of it, we'll give you the link to look at. But let's take a look at some of these occupations. Armed forces. In 1977, it was 51% yes, they should be hired for this job. 38% said no. Then in 1999, that 51 went to 70. In 2019, that 51 went to 83%. Yep, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, fine. Armed forces. Number two, doctors went from 44% in 1977 to 75% in 1999 to now 91%, which means we don't care if somebody's a gay doctor or a straight doctor. America's okay with that. Next, clergy. These are pastors, priests. 1977, 36%. 1999, 54%. Today, 72%. 72% are okay if the pastor is gay. Okay, that's America. Next, elementary school teachers, okay, which is where your kids are going to be around. 1977 was 27%. 1999, 54%. Today, 81%. By the way, so some of you say, Pat, who cares if the elementary school teacher is a gay teacher or not? Well, if they are, your kids are around it. If you're okay with that, great. If you're not, no problem. But that's how America feels about it. By the way, I can tell you from multiple families I talk to local here, there's a big private school here that's around $50,000 per year, K through 12. So many parents are taking their kids out of the school because they've crossed the line on way too much LGBTQ pride and trying to impose it on the students. And a lot of parents are saying, listen, you're not what you used to be 20 years ago. Even though I went here, I'm taking all my kids out, and they're leaving to different schools right around the corner. I hear this locally, and I bet this is happening all across the country as well. Now, next question from Gallup. You ready? In your view, is being gay or lesbian something a person is born with, or due to factors such as upbringing and environment? Look how much this has changed since 1977. In 1977, only 13% said this is something you're born with. 56% said you're gay because of your environment. In 1999, that 13 went to 34%, and the environment went down to 40%. And then I'll bring it to today, born with 49%, environment 32%. So from 1977, which was roughly 45, 46 years ago, to today, we went from 13%, you think you're born with it, you're not, to 49%. Yeah, about half the country says you're born this way. That's a pretty big difference just in 45 years. Here's another controversial one that some people are uncomfortable talking about. I'm proud of the fact that Gallup's actually doing these kinds of surveys. Do you think gays and lesbians should or should not be allowed to adopt children? 1977. 14%. Today, 75%. Should gays and lesbians be allowed to adopt children? Just 45 years ago, we're not okay with it. Today, 75% is okay with it. Some will say, well, you think it's a bad idea? How about all these kids that need a place to live? Who cares who gets them, whether they're gay or straight? Fine. Some people say, do you see about all these other arrests that are coming out with gay parents that are adopting kids and what's happening to these kids? Yeah, but that doesn't happen all the time. Either way, there's an argument for both sides. So now let's take a look at history. When did this whole thing get started? When did we coin the term homosexual? You know when it was? 1869, it was first coined by Hungarian journalist Karl Maria Kerthbeny. Then in 1897, the first known gay rights organization called the Scientific Humanitarian Committee is founded in Germany. 1924, Magnus Hirschfeld publishes The Transvestites, The Psychology of Sex Expression. This was one of the first scientific studies of transgender people. 1968, congressional proceedings reference gender identity that occurs in a report on public health service under the National Institute of Mental Health summary of sex deviates, which included gender identity disorder as a future direction for research. That's 1968 under Lyndon Johnson, if you wonder who the president is. 1971, the first legal challenge to a state ban on same-sex marriage was filed in Minnesota. 1973, which by the way is only about 50 years ago if you think about it. Ready? The American Psychiatric Association removes homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. That means in 1972 being homosexual was a mental disorder. This ain't 200 years ago, folks. This is just 50 years ago, when we, the health professions, used to think it was a mental disorder to be gay. 1973, it changed. 1974, the first gay pride marches are held in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. 1986, you ready for this one? Courts rule that there is no constitutional protection for sodomy. In Bowers versus Hardwick, ruling allows sodomy to continue being criminally prosecuted in states where laws prohibit homosexual activity. So why is this 1986? Because the AIDS epidemic was in June of 81 and people were worried about what was taking place. A lot of gay folks were getting AIDS because the whole concept of sodomy is what they're talking about. If you don't know what sodomy is, don't go Google it because some sites may come up. But that's kind of what caused this 1986 ruling. 1987, the Supreme Court of the United States rules that sexual orientation is not a constitutionally protected class. This is 87, okay? How long ago was that? 35 years ago? 36 years ago? 1988. 1993 was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy prohibiting lesbians, gay, and bisexual people from coming out or telling others about anything related to their sexual activity. Anything related to their sexuality is codified on this date. Same year, 1993, the Supreme Court of the United States rules that the Boy Scouts of America cannot discriminate against gays and lesbian scouts. 1994, big year, the National Education Association, NEA, passes a resolution calling for the inclusion of LGBTQ topics in the curriculum. 1996, another interesting one, Congress passes the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, which defines marriage as between one man and one woman for federal purposes, signed by the one and only Bill Clinton. This was obviously a major setback for the same-sex marriage, but it was overturned in 2013. 2003, the Supreme Court of the United States rules that same-sex sexual activity is illegal in all 50 states. 2004, Massachusetts becomes the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. Do you want to know who the governor was? Republican Governor Mitt Romney. 2005, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network releases its first national school climate survey, which finds that LGBTQ students are disproportionately bullied and harassed in schools, which leads to 2008, California voters approve Proposition 8, which banned same-sex marriage in the state. 2009, Proclamation 8387, President Barack Obama dedicates June as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month. 2011, California passes the Fair Education Act, which requires that all public schools in the state teach about the contributions of LGBTQ community to history and culture. 2011, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is repealed. 2013, gender identity disorder updated to gender dysphoria in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. In 2015, this is a big one, the Supreme Court rules in Obergefell versus Hodges that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples by the Due Process and Equal Protection Clauses of the 14th Amendment. This decision legalizes same-sex marriage in all 50 states. Okay, so in 2016, 2017, Barack Obama tried to make it more inclusive for transgenders to be able to participate and not get judged. Trump comes up and he revokes it, but then here's what happens the following year in 2018. The White House announces that most transgender people are prohibited in the military, okay? Then in 2020, a letter from the Department of Education announces that the inclusion of transgender athletes in sports teams based on their gender identity is a Title IX violation. This motion effectively bans transgender athletes from participating in sports. So look, why are all these parents? I mean, you see in Glendale what's going on with the protesting. Parents are coming out saying, GUSD, we're sick and tired of Glendale Unified School District. And it's happening across the country. But how did all this material go into schools? Why are public school teachers teaching this stuff? It's pissing off parents. How do we get here? You have to know who's behind it all. For example, do you remember how we talked about earlier about the California passing the Fair, Accurate, Inclusive Act in 2011, which requires all public schools in the state to teach about the contributions of the LGBTQ people to history and culture? That's kind of how it happened. It was something that passed. But more importantly, policies that make LGBTQ-related material mandatory in schools are typically approved by state legislatures. In some cases, these policies are the result of grassroots activism, while in other cases they are initiated by government officials. Once it's a policy, it is then implemented by school district. And who was the most responsible for the California Fair Education Act? You ready? These organizations: Equality California, Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, Human Rights Campaign, HRC, National Center for Lesbian Rights, Transgender Law Center. And what do these organizations have in common? You ready? They have the same three donors. And do you want to know who's behind these three donors? I wonder who. Do you want to take a wild guess? You probably will get it right. Let me give it to you. First one is Gilead Sciences. In 2001, they became the first company to develop a once daily pill for the treatment of HIV and AIDS. That's one of the biggest funders. And by the way, do you know who's been a shareholder of theirs since 1999? Soros Fund Management. And in 2015, Soros Fund Management was one of the investors in a group that acquired a majority stake in Themis Medicare, a company that provides specialty pharmacy services to patients with HIV and AIDS. And Gilead Sciences is a major customer of Themis Medicare. The second foundation is called the Arcus Foundation, and George Soros is a trustee of the Arcus Foundation and has donated millions of dollars to this foundation. And the third one, ready? The Gill Foundation, which, who do you think is a trustee? George Soros is a trustee and has donated millions of dollars to the foundation's work. A little weird. Why is this guy behind it? Why are you so concerned about kids and wanting to teach this to them? Like, how does it matter to you, George Soros? Why do you care so much? It's a valid question for parents to ask why he's funding this. By the way, as of June 2023, there are 6 states that make it mandatory to teach LGBTQ-related material in schools. Ready? California, Colorado, Illinois, Nevada, Jersey, and Oregon. So look, I don't know where you stand or what you're going to be saying, but either way, you're probably like, what the hell is Pop? This is kind of uncomfortable to talk about this stuff. You're either watching and saying, I can't stand you doing this. This is why I hate valuetainment and PVDM. No problem. Or you're saying this, wow, I never knew about this stuff. I'm kind of interested in what else he has to say. I want to kind of look at some religions. If you were to look at which one is the most tolerant to same-sex marriage and which one is the least. If we have to say Muslim, that's the least tolerant. But the most tolerant is Catholics. And this is according to Pew Research. It's followed by Jews, then mainline Protestant, then historically black Protestant, then Mormons at 27%, and the least tolerant is the evangelical Protestant. And by the way, why don't we look at U.S. World News on what countries are the most tolerant to same-sex marriage? Here's what you will find according to U.S. News. If we look at these 24 different countries, you see at the top where it says totally opposed, somewhat favor, strongly favor, or total favor score all the way to the right. Here's what you'll find. Canada, 79. U.S., 63. But look at this. The country with the highest favorability score is Sweden with 92. Then it's Netherlands, then Spain, France, then Germany. You can look at the rest. The lowest, believe it or not, is Hungary in that list with 31. But if you go to other countries such as Indonesia, which is the largest Muslim country in the world, it's got the lowest score with 5, outside of Nigeria, and even Kenya's at 9, and Israel is at 36. It tells you most Christian nations are tolerant, and those that are Muslim nations are not tolerant for same-sex marriage. As if I haven't pissed you off enough with this data that we're sharing with you, I'm gonna share with you from Pew Research, and here's what it says. Unlike other Democrats, a majority of black Democrats say gender is determined by sex at birth. So these are black Democrats. These are folks who were really needing civil rights at one point just 60 years ago. Now they're kind of saying civil rights is different than gay rights. If you look at this, here's what it says. So unlike other Democrats, a majority of black Democrats say gender is determined by sex at birth. If you look at this here, the yellow to the left is determined sex assigned at birth. The blue on the right is can be different from sex assigned at birth. If you look at the Republican leaning, you'll see 86 say no, your sex is determined at birth. 13 say you can change. But look at the white. 72% say it can be different from sex assigned at birth, but look at blacks. Only 33. That's a 40-point discrepancy, and blacks are 66% saying it's determined by sex at birth. You know what it says? Blacks are closer to Republicans than white liberals. They have a 40-point difference. Hispanics are at 44 and Asians are at 38, but blacks are the least tolerant on this topic according to Pew Research. Here's another one, man. Black Democrats are going to piss off a lot of the white Democrats when you see this, and this is purely their data. I didn't do this here. You can get upset at Pew Research and write a negative review about them because these guys are pissing off some of the wrong people. Watch this one. Democratic K-12 parents differ by race, ethnicity over what kids should learn in school about gender identity. Look at this here. Percentage-wise, I mainly want to look at the left one here, which is the green one, where it says someone can be a boy or a girl, even if it's different from sex at birth. Republicans say no. 9% agree with this. White said 64% yes, you can be different than what you were born with, but blacks said 30%. Do you realize blacks are only 21% away from Republicans and 34% away from white Democrats? How weird is that? My experience on being in the military with my black friends or selling memberships at Bally's or working in the financial industry for the last 20 years with our African American community, the grandmothers and the mothers are typically very conservative. So this makes sense to me. And by the way, I just want you to watch this one video by this guy. You may know this guy's name is Malcolm X. He gave this speech many, many years ago, comparing the difference between what a white liberal is versus a white conservative. And the only reason I want you to watch his speech, if you've never seen this before, is because in this context, we're comparing black Democrats to white Democrats. Here's what Malcolm X had to say about this many, many decades ago.
The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful, more hypocritical than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game that is constantly raging between the white liberals and the white conservatives. The American Negro is nothing but a political football, and the white liberals control this ball through tricks or tokenism, false promises of integration and civil rights. In this game of deceiving and using the American Negro, the white liberals have complete cooperation of the Negro civil rights leader, who sell our people out for a few crumbs of token recognition, token gains, token progress.
So what do you think about his message? What do you think about what he has to say? You think they liked what he had to say? He's calling everybody out. And by the way, there's a part of America today that believes that. They're like, wait a minute, I don't relate to what's going on in America today. I love America. I'm a John F. Kennedy Democrat. I love what America stood for. I'm not part of all this craziness. Here's a stat that just came out that shows what's going on by generation, by generation, by generation. This is pissing off parents. So let me get this straight. So traditionalists, people being born before 1946, only 1.7% of them are part of the LGBTQ community. As if they're afraid to come out of the closet. You know how people say, well, because people are more comfortable today to come out. No, there isn't anybody that's more comfortable who doesn't give a shit about what you and I think than the older generation. They don't care what you and I think. Like, I'm 72 years old. I'm gay. I don't care if you like. They don't care whether you think anything about it or not. They're only at 1.7%. Baby boomers are at 2.7%. Gen X is 3.3%. Millennials born from 1981 to 1996 are 11.2%. And Gen Z, kids born from 1997 to 2004, 20%? 1 out of 5? Really? That's really, naturally, that's how they were? Or is this going back to the Gallup thing that we looked at where it says environment? Do you remember the whole environment was a big part of it? Yeah, this is saying that we were smarter 50 years ago than we are today. And by the way, remember how I started this? And I said there's 4 things I pray for: courage, wisdom, tolerance, understanding. Trust me, it takes courage to make this video because I'm going to get a lot of hate for a video like this. But the tolerance part, it's starting to get to a point that Listen, this concept of tolerance, back in the days it was Corinth, now it was a city that was Corinth. Now America, the greatest country in the world, is turning into Corinth. The school you're going to, you're okay with that? So are we, you know what happens typically with tolerant people? Here's how tolerant people are. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, it's fine. Yeah, I'm not with it, but go for it. Yeah, it's cool. Little bit of tolerance, fine. All of a sudden you realize, I think that guy's taking advantage of my tolerance. Am I being preyed on? Am I being abused a little bit? Listen, you're not doing this anymore. You crossed the line with my kids. We're staying right here. And by the way, I'm Middle Eastern. I fall in a very weird category. I've experienced all these other things. Hey, you know, you're discriminating, you're from Iran. I understand why somebody would say that for being from Iran. Totally get it. I'm from Iran. I get it. But women's rights, there is no debate. Of course we have to have women's rights. Civil rights, absolutely. I don't care if I'm darker than you or whatever I am, yes. Gay rights has turned into a religion where everybody's walking on eggshells, especially the Christian community, because we are seeing you guys are tolerant so we can take advantage of you. And Muslims say, listen man, pump the brakes. We're right here. We don't play the games here. Go do that in America, not in our country. Oh, okay, we'll respect it. But no, in America, these guys are cowards. They're so tolerant. You can take advantage of them. And based on some of the data, I think people are waking up. And they're saying, maybe we can learn a little bit from Muslims. Maybe we can learn a little bit from them. They don't compromise their standards. And maybe Christians need to start realizing we also don't need to compromise our standards and start speaking up. Again, if I pissed you off, awesome. That was the purpose of this content, to get you thinking. If you're watching this and you're like, I was not planning for me to wake up this morning thinking about this topic, but holy shit, here we go. Now I got to text this to my mom and dad and my husband and my wife and my best friend and say, do you agree with what Pat has to say? I don't care. All I want to do with our team of research team that brought all this content, we're all thinking just like you are. I'm sitting and saying, I didn't know this, I didn't know this, I didn't know this. Wow, that's pretty crazy. And if you feel that way, share this with others and talk about it. And if you're a parent and your blood pressure went up the last 20 minutes, we're doing some events around the country for parents. I may be doing one in the city I grew up in where I went to school, because a lot of parents are frustrated with Glendale Unified School District. But if you're a parent and you want to know if we do any other events for parents in a city coming near you, text the word parents to 310-340-1132. Once again, text the word parents to 310-340-1132. We will let you know if we do any events in your city. And if you want to watch a video as a parent, how to go fight for your kids, we did a video here specifically for you. If you haven't seen it, click here to watch that video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.